Dude, for a president to stand in front of media and say that these TV stations don't like him and that they should have the authority to pull their license because they report so negatively on Trump. Dude, that's not America. Okay, that's not the free speech that we are accustomed to.
That's Russia. That's China. That's North Korea.
Yeah.
You know, you can argue that's Cuba, but you can't say that's the United States of America. That's no Western democracy. That's not what that is.
Alrighty, welcome in Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon and
David Person.
How are you, David?
Man, I'm feeling good, man. How about you?
You know, not bad. Been an interesting, few days and a week or so, I guess. It's been a little wild and woolly out here as we watch, democracy die. But before we get into that, I need to tell you about our friends over at Wind Creek Entertainment who sponsor this show and make it all possible and really help us out. They're great. They operate 3 fantastic facilities in the state of Alabama, gaming facilities that are the casinos that they operate in Montgomery, Wetumpka, and Atmore. Atmore and Wetumpka are, of course, the crown jewels of those places. If you're headed to the beach, boom, pop into Atmore, stay overnight, break up the trip, have yourself a nice time, stay in the spa, go to the restaurants, let the kids go play in the arcades, go to the pool, hang out, have yourself a nice relaxing time. Don't do it. If you're going to Auburn for a game, I know you don't have one this weekend, but they got some other good home games coming up on the schedule. Going over to one of those SEC games that are coming up, you're not going to be able to stay in Auburn. Nobody wants to pay $500-$600 a night to stay over in Auburn, so you're going to stay in Montgomery or in that area anyways. Go to Wetumpka. And stay in the resort, man. I mean, you won't regret it at all. You'll have a great time doing it. Yeah, I mean, it is. You've been recently.
Yeah, I've been. Yeah, it's nice.
Hey, listen. And whenever David gives you the that's that's the seal of approval right there. And so look, go and look them up online. Wind Creek Entertainment. Book a stay. You're not going to regret it. We really appreciate what they do here and appreciate what the Porch Creeks have done around the state. They're some of the states. They're one of the state's largest employers. They're the largest hospitality employer in the state. They own a ton of hotels and other businesses and stuff in the state. They pay a ton in taxes. They provide a number of jobs. They provide all sorts of gifts and bonuses and charitable contributions around. They support schools inside their tribal areas and outside of their tribal areas. That Boys and Girls Club they operate there is some of the most amazing work I've seen in a long time, and I wish they could spread it around the state. If we operated the state the way they operate their reservation, this would be a whole different place. I'll tell you that. This would be a whole different place. All righty. Let's get into it.
All right.
We're still here. Jimmy Kimmel, not so much. So we've gotten rid of Colbert and Kimmel, and I'm assuming Jimmy Fallon is probably next.
Well, that's what the president said, right? He said Fallon and Seth Meyers are next. But, it sounds a little weird to me to say that Colbert's gone because Colbert's still going to be there. He's on now, and he's going to be there until May. So it seems a little weird to say he's gone.
Yeah.
But I know they're getting rid of the whole shebang. Right.
Yeah.
Not just Colbert, but the whole enterprise.
Show.
Right.
Yeah. It's and I'll tell you this. It honestly, I think, bothers me more the real reasons why those people are being pushed out or have been pushed out than it would if just they had simply said something derogatory about the president or about Charlie Kirk. Because let's be honest, they first of all, Colbert was separate from all this, and Kimmel didn't really say anything. For all of the the pomp and circumstance from the Republicans who keep saying he said these insensitive things about Charlie Kirk. No, he didn't. He did not. He did not. Matter of fact, the whole thing that was even mentioned in there was him talking about the shooter and how the MAGA folks, they're trying to prove that that this kid's not one of theirs. That was it. He didn't say anything derogatory about Charlie Kirk at all.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. There's demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish.
And that's what I was really thinking, too. I was like, if anything, he was very critical of MAGA. I didn't see him really spending a lot of time on Kirk. And, and whatever he did say about Kirk, which I don't even really remember other than maybe a sentence or two, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard worse said about Kirk. So,
well, yeah, it's, I think that he did say something, and really I think the thing he said about Kirk was more a jab at Trump, because he played the clip of Trump, being asked, how are you holding up? And Trump immediately, I think, fine. Right. Oh, by the way, you see the trucks building the ballroom.
That's right.
And it's,
That's
I mean, come on. And so, look, this was about the merger. All right. It was about the Nexstar merger. They're the largest carrier of ABC stations. They have this merger that's going to be before the Trump administration that's going to need approval. And that's what they're doing. We've got the reporting now out from the, behind the scenes at Disney and what was taking place there and their angst about this thing going down. And this was something that they're essentially, an offering that they were laying at Trump's feet. And to get this merger done. And
now, so to be clear, supposedly this news came out, I think, towards the end of this week. I want to say it was Thursday. We're doing this on a Friday, which is unusual for us.
Yes.
There was a news report that said that Kimmel and the people at ABC or Disney have been having conversations. I think it was with the Disney execs, and that the objective actually is to bring him back at some point. So this is what was reported. You could say maybe if that report is true, then this is maybe just a sort of an indefinite suspension, but not an expulsion. But still, your bottom line point is correct. This is about what David Letterman in his comments that he made also this week. This is about managed media. This is about the government trying to manage media in a way that is beneficial to the current administration. And that means, that we're really talking about an assault on free speech.
Yes. Yeah, no, it absolutely is an assault on free speech. And the current president's description of this should send everybody over the edge. I mean, I can't, let me tell you this. If Joe Biden or Barack Obama had said something similar to this, I would be out of my mind over this. Okay. And I mean that sincerely. I do mean that sincerely because dude, for a president to stand in front of media and say that these TV stations don't like him and that they should have the authority to pull their license because they report so negatively on Trump. That's it. It's not verbatim, but it's pretty damn close to what he said.
But it's pretty close. Yeah.
That's pretty close to what he said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, that's not America. Okay. That's not the free speech that we are accustomed to.
That's Russia. That's China. That's North Korea. Yeah. You can argue that's Cuba, but you can't say that's the United States of America. That's no Western democracy. That's not what that is.
No, it's not. Look, even if the people are not doing that and it's just Trump being Trump again, and just like he did with the moving of Space Command to Huntsville when he blamed it on mail-in voting in Colorado because he wanted to make a political issue out of a non-political issue. Even if that's the case, it's still the president of the United States saying that we're weaponizing a government agency against the free speech of these networks, these broadcast over-the-air networks. And that can't happen. That cannot happen. What gets me is also, because I did see the thing with Letterman that you're talking about. And, and I thought Letterman, one of the best points that he made in there was while he was on air, they made fun of every president except for basically Jimmy Carter, because there's nothing really, Jimmy Carter's such a nice, sweet man. There was no reason to make fun of him. And plus, different political climate at the time, okay? And really a different political climate for Reagan, different political climate for George Bush Sr. We just didn't have this, it wasn't the same sort of thing. That really didn't come along, until everybody was kind of honed in on this thing until Clinton. And if you think Donald Trump has been attacked by people, I would like for you to go back to the Clinton years, okay?
Man.
Nobody's saying he didn't deserve it, okay? I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, but my Lord,
especially
dominated.
After Lewinsky. I mean, especially, but even before Lewinsky, with all of the women that were either coming forward or that were being sort of pointed to as former lovers and or women who had been subjected by him to unwanted sexual advances. I mean, that was the constant flow.
Yes.
So, Clinton was taking a beating all the time. And then after Lewinsky, the Lewinsky situation, and by the way, just to be clear, I have been very critical when I was doing talk radio back during those days. I was very critical of Bill Clinton over that stuff as a liberal. I was very critical of him. So he was getting his butt kicked all over the place.
Yeah. No, it was, look, I'll say this, most politicians have a flaw. I mean, even the great ones have a flaw. Reagan had his, George W. Bush certainly had his flaws. George Sr. had his flaws. They all have one. Clinton's flaws, women. I mean, it's his downfall. He cannot, we have some other ones in this state. John Merrill comes to mind. That's their kryptonite, for lack of a better term. And, I'm not excusing it in any way. Outside of that, if Clinton could have stopped that part of himself and held that in check and held himself in control, I mean, there's no telling what history would say about that man, I mean, the way that he worked and the way he worked across the aisle, the way he balanced the budget, the things that he implemented. I mean, he would have, what other knock is there on Bill Clinton other than this? And look, I understand that's a little bit like saying what else happened at the play, Mrs. Lincoln. I get that. Okay. And I'm not saying we're skipping over it, but I'm just saying what other knock is there against Bill Clinton?
I got some quibbles with him over some policy stuff, but nothing that would cause me to say, oh, he was a horrendous president. But that Monica Lewinsky mess, that absolutely, in my mind, just, even, and I'm not even talking so much about the fact that he was cheating. He wasn't the first president to cheat. George H.W. Bush reportedly was cheating on his wife. If you look at some of the stories, there were some stories out there about him, never really got any traction, but there were stories, there was reporting about it. We know that John F. Kennedy was a notorious womanizer. So, Clinton wasn't the first, but the problem was he was so brazen in how he did what he did.
I don't know if he was brazen or stupid.
He's doing stuff in the Oval Office. Yeah, it was brazen. It was dumb.
Yeah.
It was just kind of, you just question his judgment on all levels, not just his moral character based on the kryptonite that you talked about, but just his judgment.
Yeah. And listen, but now in 2025 light, it was nothing comparatively speaking. He never paid off a porn star. And so,
true.
Or was caught on tape, describing sexual assault or credibly found guilty by a judge of, rape.
True.
But,
all true.
And that's defined by the judge, not me. That's defined by the judge.
All true. Yeah.
And so, I just
and link to it. Did you say link to a pedophile? Did you say that?
Oh, I've not. Yeah, we were going to get into that in the closing.
Okay.
Sentence,
well, he was. I mean, you're right.
But
he
yes, he is. He is linked to a pedophile. Credibly linked.
He was. But it didn't happen during his presidency. I'm talking about Clinton now. We didn't know about the link to Epstein during his presidency. We learned about that afterward.
Yes. Yeah. And listen, as we've said many times, if he is linked to this, then put him in prison, man. I do not care. Let me tell you what I'm not going to have to do if Bill Clinton goes to jail. I am not going to have to take down my Bill Clinton flag or burn my Bill Clinton hat or take out my Bill Clinton T-shirts or sell my Bill Clinton shoes.
Yeah.
or
Or
any
cash
of the
in your
other.
Bill Clinton crypto. You're right.
Yeah, no, no, just
Yeah,
I'm
you
I'm
won't
gonna,
have to
I'm
do
gonna
any
be
of
fine.
that.
I'm gonna be fine. And so, but back to this. I mean, what we're doing now. Look, this can't be the way that we operate. Okay, it cannot be. It cannot be the way that we operate. All right, it cannot be. I've got a lot of quibbles with our system of capitalism that we have right now. Okay, and first of all, I also have a lot of quibbles with the way the Trump administration is running us very rapidly towards state-sponsored capitalism. With the purchasing of various private companies, forcing them into having government stake, ownership to a certain extent. That's literally the playbook of the Chinese Communist Party. Literally, that's literally what they do. It's not old school communism, but it's Chinese Communist Party tactics. And so I have some problems with the way this goes anyway, and the way that we can never be satisfied with the products that we have. It's had a lot to do with the whole Cracker Barrel issue that we've had prop up here. Is that Cracker Barrel couldn't just be happy with the profits that they were making. They had to continually grow the profits to keep the stockholders happy and things. And so that causes a problem, I think, in a lot of ways. And we see that now with these mergers and stuff, where these folks are so consumed by pleasing their investors, moving the companies forward, making the mergers and the deals. We've done away completely with a lot of the old safeguards against monopolies and antitrust issues. I mean, well, those are just gone. And so now we've got a handful of companies controlling every damn thing, which is the reason why everything is so expensive and so price controlled at this point, because instead of having 15 telecommunications companies out there, we've got like 5. And so that sort of thing is harmful, I think, to the everyday American and to the jobs market and to a bunch of different stuff. And it's also harmful in this way right here. It's very easy to control people when you have a situation like this. I'll tell people all the time too. We've also set ourselves up in the media to be very, very controlled. But the threatening of advertisers, because it's you have a lot of very small outlets and things out there that can be hampered. I mean, just killed overnight by a handful of things being pulled away from them, and that's no way to operate. I mean, it's just not.
I think, Josh,
threatens us all.
I think, Josh, we assumed some things that maybe we were naive to assume. We assumed that even with the proliferation of media conglomerates or the development of media conglomerates, that there was still going to be some kind of, I guess, of adherence to some of the goodwills. I'm talking specifically when it comes to the news media. I think we assumed that there was going to be some sort of commitment still to some of the old values and ethics that kind of that you and I learned when we were in the newspaper business, in the daily newspaper business. And we were, like I said, I guess maybe we were naive, because what has happened is, as news has become commodified, a lot of that stuff has eroded. And so now, as we like to complain, and I know it may make us sound like dinosaurs, but all people want is clicks and likes, and people are doing whatever they can to get clicks and likes, and you got that along with, as you're saying, the consolidation now of these news companies in a way where it makes, I'll say, the vibrancy of news coverage has gone away, and to some extent the purity, maybe it never was truly pure, but at least there was some ethical constraints there. A lot of that has gone away, but it's also made us more vulnerable to government control, as you said.
It has. And I'll say, while maybe it wasn't 100% pure, at least we seem to know for a long period of time where the truth was on things, and we've lost that completely. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's a combination of all of it. It's everything that you just said right there, plus the fact that we have this bullhorn coming from the right, where they have taken a handful of outlets that just repeat the propaganda, basically. and they do the propaganda and pretend as though that is an unbiased view of the news that they're presenting here, when it's anything but. And I think most people, I even think a lot of people on the right, when they hear it and they watch it and they see it, they know. They know. And if you have conversations with people, especially your more moderate conservatives out there, they'll wink and nod and tell you, look, we get it. The Fox News stuff. We know that that's not exactly accurate reporting and stuff, and some of it is bullshit and stuff like that. But the problem that we have now is that for so long, we relied on this centralized kind of media folks to report things, and that to just be the truth. And they didn't pick a side. So you don't have anybody coming at this from the left. The left now is just basically the facts and the things that happen, the reporting of, hey, here's what happened today. And then the right is, let me tell you what you ought to think about what happened today. And those things can't, the Democrats, the reason why the Democrats are having such a problem is they don't have a comparable system on the left to push out the agenda, to push out the propaganda, to push out their explanation of these stories. Even though a lot of their interpretation of these things would simply be the truth, they don't have people pushing that out in the same manner, in the same way that the right does. And then you also have the specter of the folks in the middle treating this stuff that's coming from the right, the clear spin and lies and things, as though that's the other side of this. I
want to shout out somebody on the right who works for Fox, who I think has managed to maintain some of that old ethical outlook that we were just talking about, at least some of the time. I'm not saying all the time, perhaps, because he is on Fox and they are partisan, and I think he's been partisan at times. But Brett Hume was quick to call out Pam Bondi, the Attorney General for the United States, on the question of hate speech. And, she's talking about cracking down on hate speech. And, supposedly, that's what's happened with Kimmel. It was hate speech. And that's what had, some of the hate speech, so-called hate speech that they say is coming from the left. And he was like, no, you're wrong. Hate speech is constitutionally protected. You cannot constitutionally target speech because you deem it to be hateful in that way. It's not the same as, the old saying about you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's not what hate speech is.
No.
Well, hate speech is, speech that somebody finds deplorable, but unless there is a explicit call to action to harm somebody, you can't put it in that category. And that's what he was saying to the Attorney General. And by the way, the other reason I'm bringing up Brett Hume is I remember when Brett Hume was on ABC, I had no idea what his politics were. No clue. None, period. Yeah. It wasn't until he joined Fox that it became clear to me, oh, this guy's a conservative. He's a right-wing conservative. But even with that in mind, I still respect what he did this week.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see that, but I'll say this, one of the most startling things that has occurred is that apparently Brett Hume had to explain to the United States Attorney General the Constitution as it relates to speech. And as I've said before, Desi, I still don't know her last name, from the Daily Show, you said, look, you could try reading the Constitution, and it really wouldn't take you that long to get to that part about the speech. It's the First Amendment. So you don't even have to, you don't have to read even that far into it. And so, all right, before we move along and get to Dr. Toni Savage and whistleblower stuff and her crazy story, I do think, I don't know that we have talked about Charlie Kirk and what kind of went on with that, but so I do want to say this: you can't kill people. Stop killing people. Stop killing people.
Please,
okay?
Please.
I mean, if you don't like what people say, argue with better ideas, okay? Present people with better facts.
That's right.
With better facts and a better presentation of stuff. It's right. Not. And listen, this is not coming from the right or the left. It's coming from I don't want to say everybody, because I think it's a minuscule number of people that really are going to commit actual political violence against somebody because they
Mhm.
don't like what they say or they believe somebody to be a threat because of the words that they're using. I think that's a tiny sliver of people that are actually out there doing that. But I do think it's probably roughly equal on both sides of this thing. And I'll say this too. I think the folks who are likely to do that are often not even guided. And I think this may be true with this dude who killed Charlie Kirk. I don't know that he's necessarily guided by a singular, political ideology.
Sound like it. Sounds like it was personal.
Yeah,
It sounds
it
like
seems
it
like
was
he,
about his
yeah,
personal relationship with because this young man
yeah,
who killed Kirk was involved with or in love with a transgender woman, and it
yeah,
sounds like that's what this is really was about for him.
yes,
But you're right, killing people. I mean, there's a great, unfortunately, as we have seen throughout history, that does happen. It happened to, El Haj Malik al-Shabazz, who we used to call Malcolm X. It happened with Dr. King. It's happened with others. Alan Berg, famous radio talk show host. I think that was back in the 70s or 80s. He was
yeah,
killed. I mean, people, periodically it happens. It shouldn't happen ever to anyone. I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk on anything I heard him say, basically, other than he has one religious belief that coincides with mine. He keeps Saturday, or he kept, I should say, because he's deceased, he kept Saturday as the Sabbath. So do I. But aside from that, we didn't have anything in common politically, at
yeah,
all. But I sure didn't want to see him killed
yeah,
because of the things that he was saying, even the things that were really objectionable to me.
yeah,
His criticisms of black women and black people from a very, what I thought in a way that was racist in my opinion. But, I didn't want to see him killed. It
no,
never even
yeah,
crossed my mind once. This guy needs to die. Not
yeah.
once.
It's just, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. That's why, and maybe I'm misguided here because it's just the way that I think of it. But it's just like, I don't know, man. Whenever I hear the stuff like that, I just think, oh, just turn it off. You know what I mean? Just turn it off. You turn away
And
from
that's
it.
all
Don't listen
anybody has
to
to
it.
do. That's
Yeah,
right.
I
Nobody
just,
had to what we don't have to watch anybody's
yeah,
videos or listen to anybody's podcast that we find objectionable. We can
yeah.
always turn it off.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it just, I don't know. But I'll say this. I think the reaction that has taken place, I think that we've reached a point now with the Kimmel stuff that I'm hoping is kind of the tipping point of this. And it starts to get reeled back in. And I think it used, when we were doing the TV show, The V, I said that I drew a comparison of this between this and the Me Too movement back, a few years ago, and that was a movement that had been years in the making. That it was a movement that was necessary, that brought a lot of past ills to light that should have been punished long before they were, and rightfully so. And there were a lot of women who got justice that they should have received in the past. That said, there were also, I think, once people kind of got ramped up into this sort of mentality around this thing, I think that there were some things that went on in that went too far. And I think that there were some people that will admit that some of those things went too far in taking out some people and some men that, the dude from Minnesota who was a senator that was once on SNL.
Al Franken. Yeah,
Al Franken. He got caught up in that, and listen. I know I'm picking a Democrat, okay, but seriously, I just felt like an apology at that point for something that went on that at that time where there was, as far as I know, there was no physical contact between him and this other person.
Yeah, I don't.
He made
that I recall
the video of him doing his hands while she was asleep or whatever, and and it just, you know what I mean.
It sounded like he was. It sounded like he was being dumb, and it sounded like he was being misogynistic.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say that. It certainly didn't come any close to the level of what, say, Kevin Spacey did, or Harvey Weinstein, or Bill Cosby, or God forbid, R. Kelly, or more recently, so-called Puff Diddy or Sean Combs, I guess is his legal name. P. Diddy, I don't know. The guy changed his names a million times.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of times, and I think, again, this goes back to social media. social media is driving us to the edge of humanity. I think. I mean, I think it's one of the worst curses on humanity that we've ever had is the social media stuff. I mean, it creates a mob mentality around certain issues and certain things, and things take off it would just they red hot scorching take off, and too often they go so far away from the middle and the what people believe is wrong. Because listen, there was a lot of things in the Me Too movement that they uncovered that were really, really wrong injustices that should have been taken care of, you know. But it just, I think, too much of the time, and I think that's happening here with the Kirk stuff. Listen, there were some people who said some stuff online that, you know, I'll be honest, I would have fired some of those people for some of the stuff that they said about Charlie Kirk. I would have fired some of those people. You know, I mean, it shows an amazing insensitivity to humankind, and you can't criticize people in that manner if you're then trying to hold yourself above what they are. Okay. And listen, I get the criticisms of Charlie Kirk. I get it. Okay. And I had some of those criticisms, and I would have told him to his face those criticisms. We wouldn't have come to into a fist fight or anything like that, but we would have argued. And I appreciated the fact that he argued with people face to face and tried to hold up those beliefs, as you know, as bad as I think some of them were. But I mean, if you're going to hold yourself and say that you're better morally than this person, then man, you can't say this stuff about them after they're dead. You just can't do it, and especially in that horrific manner.
It reminds me of what Dr. King used to talk about. He preached a sermon that's really it may be my favorite sermon by him, called Loving Your Enemies. And he said, we have to see the humanity in other people. We have to see the humanity in our enemies. So as objectionable as I found some of Charlie Kirk's statements, and I mean, I was looking at some of them just earlier today. I found them objectionable personally. And I understand why other people found them objectionable. And yet, you know, we still have to see, you know, whether it's Charlie Kirk, for somebody like me, whether it's Charlie Kirk or whether it's Donald Trump or somebody else who's out there saying objectionable things, you know, in objectionable ways, we gotta struggle to try to see the humanity in each other. And I'll say, as a Christian person, which I profess to be, you know, I have to remember, and I struggle. I'll admit I struggle with this, but I have to remember that these other people with whom I vehemently disagree are children of God, just like I am. That's what my belief system teaches me. Yeah. And that's what I try to live up to. It's very hard, and I'm not saying I do it well, but I know that's what I know I have to try to do.
Yeah, I know, and I think that is very admirable. I mean, for me personally, I've always found I can take somebody a lot better who is sincere in their beliefs, even if those beliefs are really, in my mind, ignorant and harmful. If they're doing it because they believe those things, and there's some, because most often when somebody believes something like that, they believe it because they think that it will lead to a good outcome for other people. All right. And I think that, you know, no matter what we just, let's, you know, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. You know, the stuff about trans kids. Okay. There are people who I vehemently disagree with, who I think are harming trans kids, but with some of the policies that they're pushing. But I can better respect those people who believe that they're doing these things to help kids, genuinely believe that they're doing these things to help kids, because they feel like some of the stuff that is taking place is going to be harmful to them in the future. And I think they genuinely believe those things. All right. I'm not saying they're right, and I'm not saying that that's a good policy or anything else. Don't get me wrong. But I understand that they're coming from it from the position of, this is a thing that I think will help these kids. Okay. And so I can better respect that than I can some politician. That's the reason why we've had our right-wing nut segment all this time, is because, and we got to talk about that as well. But is because, you know, I feel like those people are playing a game to a certain degree, and they don't have anybody's best interest except their own. They have their own best interest at heart, and they're perfectly willing to harm people on both sides just to get ahead themselves. And that's who I don't have any respect for in these debates. But even those people, I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to, I mean, maybe have their feelings hurt, but no, I don't want to hurt them. So, all right, let's slide out. Let's get Dr. Toni Savage in. We'll talk about whistleblowers and how the government absolutely shouldn't work in another regard. So, it's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wing Creek Entertainment. We're back in a minute.
Welcome back to Alabama Politics This Week. David Person, Josh Moon, and we are very glad to have with us Dr. Toni Savage. Now, she is currently a full-time minister. She's on the pastoral staff of the Union Chapel Missionary Baptist Church here in Huntsville, Alabama. Our friend Dr. O. Wendell Davis is her senior pastor there, and she's also the president and founder of Zion Ministries. Now, we do occasionally get adjacent to religion in some of our discussions here on Alabama Politics This Week, but this actually is not a religious discussion. What we really going to delve into is Dr. Savage's documented history as a government whistleblower. She blew the whistle, as we say, when she was working with the Army Corps of Engineers. And she was speaking out specifically against contracting fraud in the Ranges program. And we wanted to talk to Dr. Savage because with everything that's going on in the federal government today, it probably is the right time to talk about I guess I'll say for now, the art of whistleblowing, why it's important, what the impact can be, and perhaps maybe some more people need to be blowing the whistle in some of these governmental agencies where so much turmoil and controversy currently is swirling around under the Trump administration. So, Dr. Savage, welcome. Glad to have you with us. And I want to start by asking you to just kind of give us a brief overview of what you were doing when you worked for the Army Corps of Engineers. And I'm assuming that was here in Huntsville. Is that right?
That's correct. And thank you for having me. So nice to be here and good to see you again and to meet
Yes,
Josh.
always.
But yes, of course, I started working here. My husband and I moved here 33 years ago now. We've been married 34 years. And I progressed through the federal system, becoming eventually a contracting officer with an unlimited warrant and a secret security clearance. And so I signed contracts for actually a wide variety of programs. I worked on Intelligence Security Command, environmental, for the Walter Reed program, medical things. But for this particular story that you're talking about is for ranges. And for that, we were designated, Huntsville Center Corps of Engineers was designated the expert subject matter for the ranges program. And we designed training ranges for soldiers so they could train. And then so they were trying to streamline and have a standard range design for the soldiers, our active military. And so for that, I was reassigned to this program. I also worked ground-based missile defense program. But for ranges, we were just designing these training ranges for the soldiers. And so upon becoming that contracting officer, I just discovered just a wide array of fraudulent contracts, operating procedures. And so therefore, this program was allowed to operate that way for over 20 years, audit said. And so naturally you have then a culture that has set up. And so when you have something new, someone new, and actually, before we started recording, we were joking a little bit about my PhD, but that's what my degree is in, teams. And so therefore, when you have a new formation, anytime you introduce someone new, that team starts really all over again. And so you have a person coming in who now holds everyone accountable. I did not rubber stamp anything. I demanded review. I demanded being on the meetings. They, in effect, had turned the program over. When you have government contracts, you, of course, have contractors.
Right.
However, the regulations say that contractors are not allowed to do inherently government duties. However, this program had turned their program over in effect to a subcontractor who, in my view, is really not my view, according to regulation, had privy to information on other subcontractors, other contractors, government estimates. You had proposals. And so, therefore, the potential to steer contracts to favorite people, to we don't know. Maybe there were kickbacks. That possibility was never fully explored.
Yeah, that's what I was, and Dr. Savage, that's what I was
Sure.
wanted to ask you about
Sure.
specifically because you alleged fraud. So
Mhm.
the fraud exactly was what?
Well, it wasn't. It was actually upheld and proven
Yes,
because of my allegations. There were AR-15-6 investigations done,
right.
which upheld every single one of my allegations. And so
Sure.
what I'm telling you is that you cannot, in government estimates have to be done independently. However, I found that they were working in in connection with their contractors who would be getting the jobs. The estimates and the proposals would come in, sometimes within cents of each other, sometimes at the same amount. Again, this subcontractor who worked for a contractor saw competitors' bids. There were contracts where the program manager and project managers were telling the contractors that they could start the contracts. Federal regulation says only the contracting officer is allowed to obligate the government to contracts. And so you had contracts who that had gone away. However, they were allowed to continue working without an official contract signed by a contracting officer.
So we have, if I'm understanding you correctly, we had instances of preferential treatment, it
Yes,
sounds like. Uh,
that's part of it.
did we also have instances, clear instances of people who were profiting through double dipping or payments under the table? Were there any result of the fraud? Did it result in personal gain that should not have occurred,
Well,
as far as you could
again,
tell?
that particular aspect, what I will say is that the FBI was involved. However, the commander ordered the auditors to not disclose the dirty laundry. So again,
Mm,
some of those aspects, as far as I know, were not fully explored. However, what I can say for my part is that particular contracts were steered towards certain contractors. When you have a small business program, say 51% should go to a small business. However, they were still trying to go to their contractors that they favored. You had, again, people who had no contract still working under the authority of the project manager. I mean, it was literally daily things that I found. And again, I'm coming onto a program that had been operating for 20 years. So it was just daily things that I would have to work with the auditors on. And what I will say is that the auditors, our internal auditors, took an unprecedented step in documenting in the internal audit saying that I was the only person actually trying to do the right thing on the program that was complying. I believe the language was that leadership was aware of the way this program had been operating for years and had not done anything, which was an unusual rebuke in an internal audit. And they went
mm.
so far as to even provide me a copy because the commander was trying to have them, as I understand it, sweep it under the rug, not finalize it. Some of them actually left the agency. And that's how
Wow.
I got one of the auditors who left, wrote me an email and said in the email that I'm afraid that this will get swept under the rug and I want to provide you as the contracting officer a copy of what we found because
Wow.
it took months for them to finalize the audit and they only finalized it because they realized through my filing a grievance that I had a copy.
Mm.
Let me get just a couple of, because I'm on the outside kind of coming into this. Let me get a couple of the basics of this. How much money are we talking about?
Oh, millions of dollars. Yeah. This was over 13 years, so I can't
Right.
even, remember but it was millions of dollars.
Yeah. So was it primarily one person, or one group, one contractor that there was some, I think you call them subcontractor, one subcontractor that was at the center of this?
Yes, and what he was doing, he eventually got barred from the building because we had a lieutenant commander, Lieutenant Colonel Deal, who was working, which I didn't even realize until he retired and he came to my office and told me. He said, you've had a friend, what we call the front office was the executive office. He said, you've had a friend this entire time, and I couldn't tell you. And he said that on his way out the door, but he barred this subcontractor. However, once Colonel Deal retired, they allowed him back into the building. So you
Who is
had
the subcontractor? Can we say?
well, what I would prefer to do is refer you to, because we've signed a settlement agreement, an NDA.
Oh, okay.
However, it's a public case, it's a public
Okay.
document, so you can find the information. And I would also refer you to the National Whistleblower Center, where I'm one of the board members. They have a lot of our documents online.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't want to get you in any trouble. I
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to see if we could name this person. And did I hear you correctly that are they back doing subcontracting work now?
Well, again, you're looking at years ago. So this is 13 years ago. Many people have retired. Many people have left. I have no idea. I've not been there for many years.
Okay.
I would guess not, because of the length of the time of the case.
But they did go back to subcontracting after this?
Yes, yes. The program manager, the government contractor, the government employee, even after I was illegally terminated, and all of this came to light, he received an award from our general. So yeah, and all of that
Wow.
is publicly documented. It's in our case file. You can go to the National Whistleblower Center website. On that website, you will see stories of people just like me. And my story, you'll see my photo and my story documented, and they have places that you can click to see our documents. And I will say this, before our first hearing that we had, the agency was denying that there were even 15-6 investigations done. And so I had to look through my documents that I had and found the name of the officer that came here from California. And so my attorney looked him up. And so he sent us a draft of his work, because I worked daily with these people. They came to my files to do their investigations, my files that I kept on my desk just to keep track of the workload that I had. And so after they found that we had contacted the officer, then miraculously the 15-6 investigations appeared
What's a
at the hearing.
15-6 invest?
That's a
Yeah.
Army 15-6. It's where the Army appoints independent people to come and oversee allegations.
Okay.
Rangers had two based on allegations that I had set forth. And again, one thing I'd like to say, David and Josh, most people, when they say most whistleblowers, they don't set out to say, I'm going to blow the whistle. We're just doing our jobs.
Yeah.
For me, we were following, it was required. We had to follow the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the FAR. In addition to other regulations, you would have the Army regulation, the engineer regulation. You had lots of headquarters had regulations, but we call the FAR the contracting Bible, because we had to and it outlines, all of the duties and the purpose that Congress appropriates these different roles to is so that no one person can be in control. You can't have a program manager who is in control of who gets the contracts,
Sure.
who gets the money, right? And so you have these different roles. You would have the subject matter experts, which would be the engineers, the people that know the scope of the work, the details. Then you have people like me, the contracting officials. Then you would have the money people.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a whole team of people. And what happens when it works well, everyone stays in their lane, which is kind of like life anyway. But when everyone stays in their lane, but you have, unfortunately, and the Corps of Engineers, especially during the time that I was there, was notorious for wanting the engineers and allowing them to perform contracting duties and override contracting duties. And so then the contracting people would then go back and try to retroactively put in place what these people had already done. And I would not allow that because as a contracting officer, I could have actually been held personally liable. When you have a warrant, you can be personally liable unless the laws have changed. And again, I've been out of that workforce for some time, but my case is still current, which is one of the things that I'm adamant about working on with the National Whistleblower Center is the length that these cases go into, and they bankrupt the employees so much of the time that they're not allowed to see their cases through.
Yeah.
I was one of the fortunate ones whose case, and we had a landmark decision in my case. Even though we settled, we had a settlement along the way. Again, you're looking at over 13 years.
So
So
you
along
said
the way, we had landmark decisions.
you said that your case is ongoing.
No,
Did I understand that correctly?
we finally, there are some aspects that are outstanding. Let me say that just to be transparent. However, we settled in 2023. So it's newly, I
So
was
after
returned.
13 years, you settled
Yes,
finally.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we were exactly. So I was
So you
returned
got a
to federal
settlement.
service. I'm sorry.
So you got a settlement, but some aspects of the case are still being adjudicated?
Yes, small pieces. But the main part is that the illegal termination was returned. I was returned to federal service.
Okay.
I retired in 2023.
Okay.
So the illegal termination went away. I received excellent performance appraisals up until the time that I blew the whistle,
So
and that
let me
which was
ask you
part of my
this, Doc. Okay. So let me ask you this, Dr. Savage. You said you were terminated illegally. Was
Mhm.
that retribution? Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly, and that's why I was deemed a whistleblower by the judge. I was granted whistleblower protection in retaliation to my disclosures. I was illegally terminated, and that was a hostile work environment, which is why in 2015 the MSPB granted a landmark decision in our case, and it ruled for the first time that whistleblowers who are subjected to hostile work environments can now be protected under the Whistleblower Protection Act. And it was deemed the Savage standard. So
Hmm.
part of the work that I want to do is to eventually have that federally codified. However, again, the wheels of justice turn slowly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to just ask one more thing,
Sure.
if I could. So just kind of if I'm pitching this to an editor for a story here. So essentially, what we had was there were a number of contracts within the Ranges program those contracts were kind of subjected to bid rigging. I
Yes.
guess for lack of a better term, where a subcontractor for the U.S. military was allowed to essentially take on a signing status, basically, and work with the other contractors that were being awarded these bids to rig them up. Sometimes the bids were coming in within cents of one another, not dollars, but cents. And I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars, so they've got to be. That's a pretty good coincidence. I'm assuming that's the way that you kind of figured this thing out was that there's way too many of these bids coming in way too close together, or at least one of the ways. But when this happened, you mentioned that subcontractor came back in and worked. When we're talking about millions of dollars that were toyed with, and I mean, let's be honest now. I mean, people kind of just say, "Oh, well, whatever." No, there's a business out there somewhere who got screwed out of a contract.
Exactly.
That may have gone up, and they've lost their livelihood because somebody on the inside was playing with the way these contracts were going through. So this is a serious thing.
Exactly.
why did, in your estimation, was it just did they try to cover this up on the backside, even after it was found out? Did they try to cover it up to limit the bad PR, or was there just not enough evidence to hold the person accountable? Why did he get back in there?
There was evidence because I presented the evidence and it was upheld. But again, you have to realize when people have operated for over 20 years, it's blatant, and they've been allowed to operate that way for over 20 years. So, you're exactly right. When others don't have a chance, and as a steward of the taxpayer dollars, I took that role seriously. One thing you have to understand, let me also explain this for context, is Huntsville Center Corps of Engineers is different and was different. I'm not sure now, but I would suspect the same way because this is how it was structured when it was founded. But they are, whereas other Corps of Engineers offices receive certain congressional funding, Huntsville Center is 100% reimbursable, meaning that you have to go out and find your customers. Everything is based on you bringing work in. So therefore, some people had the attitude they did what it took to keep the customers and the money flowing into the center. Now, I want to say this because my dad is a vet. My father-in-law is a vet. They honorably served this country. So it was not that I wanted to stop any mission for our soldiers and their training. However, I just demanded that we do it the right way, which meant planning. Right. We had people calling me. I mean, I just cannot stress that this was daily, every minute of the day practically. I had people from overseas calling me. There was a contractor over there who was arrested for some gun violation or another, and of course they call the contracting officer because he says, well, I'm a contractor for the Corps of Engineers. I go through the contracts. We don't have that person. Well, they've been talking with the program manager or the subcontractor who told them verbally to keep working. So see, when you have contractors who they know they've been told that they should just listen to the contracting officer. However, you have a program manager, engineer, someone who's over that portion of the program telling you to keep working. Of course, they want the contracts, they want the money, they want the jobs. And they are going based on the assumption that this person is authorized to tell them to keep working. And so you had a lot of that. I had, lots of expired contracts where people were still working. And I was discovering that as I would get phone calls, as I would get sometimes invoices in for payment that I would reject. Everything, it stopped at the contracting officer. So I would ship those invoices back. And again, you have a male-dominated hierarchy and white male, I must say, because there, of course, you can see I'm Black female. So there is a racial and gender component to this. So you had someone who now has the authority to tell you no that they don't like. They want to do it the way that they want to do it and the way that they have been doing it. And again, however, when it comes to everything hitting the fan, who was going to be out on the limb? I would be. So I
Dr.
could.
Savage, Dr. Savage, let me ask you one final question from me. Were the culprits and the enablers, the facilitators of the fraud, the people that were committing the fraud on the government end, were any of them, the contractors at fault or the government employees at fault, were any of them ever held accountable in any way?
Not to my knowledge, no.
That's
What are
unreal.
I said that was my final question. I forgot I had one more. What do you think the implications of your situation and similar situations are under this current administration and a lot of the things we see with the federal government?
Well, one thing you see that occurred even under the first Trump administration is that the Merit System Protection Board, the MSPB, is currently without a quorum, which was part of the problem in my case extending for as long as it did. The MSPB is, of course, a body that's set up where federal workers can go to appeal personnel actions that have occurred to them, that has occurred to them. And so when you don't have a quorum, no one's there to hear the appeals. And so they're just in limbo. Okay. So that's what happened to me under the first administration for President Trump, because I had a ruling. However, because my case was so unique, the administrative judge really didn't know what to do with me. So in, in his sidebar, he was like, well, I believe that some terrible things happened to you and you're a great employee, but why don't you go work for a private uh, company where you can make more money? And my thing was, why do I have to go find another job when I didn't do anything wrong? And so he did rule me as a whistleblower, which granted me whistleblower protection, but he ruled against me on the illegal termination. He was overruled eventually, and again, without having an MSPB, my case was stalled for during the entire duration of the first Trump administration. When President Biden got in, he of course appointed members to that board, and there were thousands of cases that were backlogged, mine being one of them. Okay, and so then they overruled the judge again. I think he got overruled 3 times, and saying that I was constructively suspended because of the hostile work environment that I was subjected to. And so they sent it back. And then that's when the agency finally came to the table to negotiate. And so now, in the current environment, the Trump administration is back at not having a quorum. And so that's one of the things the agency that I'm on the board with in DC, National Whistleblower Center, and my attorney, I also want to give him a shout out, Michael Cohn with Cohn and Calapinto, because he stood by me, believed in my case. You know, he wasn't paid all those years. You know, and that's part of what I want to we want to really get out, is that, you know, so many, I think there's less like 3% of or less of successful MSPB for federal employees. So we really need to work on that, and my case, like I said, goes a long way in establishing a landmark decision.
Yeah.
And so now you find yourself right back in that because there's no quorum again. And of course, you know, with all of the new policies, the DOGE cuts, the federal workers who were fired, you have so many. I think there's still some people now with the NHI, with the vaccine, that have been pushed out of their jobs. This work is crucial, and is ongoing. You know,
Yeah.
so you know,
Yeah.
that's why I'm committed to working with this organization, because they're a great advocate for whistleblowers. And I do want to say it's a nonpartisan organization. And we work closely with Senators Chuck Grassley and Senator Ron Wyden, because they co-chair the bipartisan whistleblower caucus, you know, Senate caucus. So it's you know, it's not based on political affiliation. What I can say is, like, for instance, Senator Grassley, with him being the chair and Senator Wyden being the co-chair, when President Trump got back in office, Senator Grassley sent a letter to him, you know, reiterating his stance and asking for commitment on staunch whistleblower protections.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully that something will happen. Although I have my doubts, because they're not big on whistleblowing, and that administration, because they know where the whistles typically blow. But thank you for what you've done, for sticking with it,
Yes.
for sticking up for what was right, and least of all, for joining us today out of that list of things. But we really, really do appreciate you and the time that you've spent in explaining this and the work that you've done. So thank you so much, Dr. Savage.
Well, thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. And again, I
Thank you,
just
Doc.
want to reiterate the sacrifice that people just don't see. And without my family, I just don't think I would have my faith in my family and my friends. I don't think I could have endured what I had to go through for all of those years for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
so many people, yeah, you just don't really realize the sacrifice, because I wasn't paid all of that time. We were, middle class family working our careers, building our careers. And suddenly, not only are we not without a second income and having our daughter, but now we're paying legal fees. So I had another attorney before I was with Mr. Cohn. So they bankrupt the employees, and thankfully my case was just one of the ones that was able to get through, so that now we can help other people with our. Again, I just want to reiterate. I keep saying it because it is a landmark decision that will
Yeah.
help so many people.
Yeah.
Well, I want to further it. So thank you so
Yeah,
much
well,
for having me.
absolutely. Thank you for
Thank you,
that,
Dr.
and
Savage. We
and for
appreciate you.
joining us. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
that was great. All right, we're gonna slide out. We'll come back and we'll wrap up here in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week. We're back in a minute. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person. Our thanks to Dr. Toni Savage. That was really interesting. Good Lord, man. And oh, by the way, David and I normally change clothes for our guests. Okay, so just it's just a sign of respect that we have. We give them special outfits and then we come right back. But thanks to her, thanks to the folks at Wing Creek for sponsoring us. So we really appreciate them. Thanks to the SPLC for sponsoring. Thanks to all the folks for listening and everybody for what you do. I was reminded, if you would like to get in touch with us, apwproducer@gmail.com will get you there. It's apwproducer@gmail.com. You can also rate and review us on all the platforms wherever you might find this thing. But leave us a good one. And it's because if you're going to leave a bad one, don't rate and review. Just go move along. Surely there's something else you can do. All righty. So we were going to talk about our right wing nut situation. David, you have some ideas about the right wing nut segment.
Yeah, I just been thinking about all this week about just how, the intensity and the ferociousness of the debate. Language around it. I just felt like, I started thinking about, this use of the word nut. And I thought, what, nut to me is a really pejorative term. I'm not saying it's not like a cuss word or anything like that. I'm not saying that. But, it's a really it's a put down. It's a very personalized, in my mind, it's a very personalized put down, a way to just really dismiss somebody in a way that seems to have a lot of, venom, animosity, something like that embedded in it. And I just thought, I think we probably maybe we ought to ramp that back, just roll that back a little bit and make it more, find a way to still target people that we really, truly, unequivocally disagree with something they've said or done, especially people on the right, but just do it with a little more, just maybe a little more of a soft hand.
So
yeah.
David's idea was right wing jerk off. So we're gonna
You caught me way off guard with that one. That was not my idea, by the way.
I know. I mean, look, I hear what you're saying, and that's fine. I'm not obviously not tied to the nut word exactly, but I would say that when we thought about this, I did put some thought into it, but because I did, like you, and I've heard from people who said, maybe the right wing nut is a little bit, derogatory, and you should move away from that or whatever. But and maybe it's my view, because I'll tell you where it came from. I've always thought of the word of using the term nut is kind of a playful thing, he's a nut, and it came from. I grew up in the South, of course, and it come from the Andy Griffith Show, where Barney Fife we love to call Ernest T. Bass a nut. A nut.
Sure did.
He's a nut, Andy, a nut. I'm telling you, the man's a nut.
That's a really good imitation of Barney Fife, about the Barney Fife character, by the way.
I've
really
practiced my entire life, so it should
well,
be great.
Seriously, if I closed my eyes, I would think, wait a minute, is that Don Knotts back from the dead? What is that?
Well,
That's
people
pretty
often
good.
say that about me, Barney Fife. But he's a nut, ain't he? A
Yeah,
nut, and
that's
so
pretty good.
it always kind of came across as this to me in my head, in my ear when I hear it. It's a playful sort of a thing. It's a right wing nut. It's a person that's doing wrong and doing something a little out there, but it's not the same as the right wing jerk off or the right wing asshat of the week. You know what I mean? It's just it was something not quite as derogatory, but still lets people know that this person has not been, doing some, or they have been doing some things that are pretty crazy. And so, but we can change it. We can make it something that's a lot softer. We can do, I don't know, right wing bonehead.
Let's see. You said Bonehead?
Bonehead, yeah.
Yeah, Bonehead is good, I think. Bonehead works. I mean, that to me is a lot more. It's not as I don't know. It may just be the way I grew up and where I grew up in Chicago or whatever, but it just Bonehead doesn't seem nearly as much of a personal attack as Nut does. That's just
Okay.
to me.
Well, I mean,
So
this I'm
yeah,
open to other
I'm good
things.
with Bonehead.
Right wing clown, right wing crazy, right wing. I mean, but Bonehead is good. I use Bonehead on my daughter all the time.
Doofus,
So,
Bonehead, Doofus. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Bonehead is fine. Bonehead
Yeah.
is fine with me. We can go with that.
All right, right wing bonehead of the week. Well, with that in mind, our right wing bonehead of the week then is going to be Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, who always looks like he's surprised.
He does.
He
does.
Who had one of the worst hearings that I have ever seen in my life the other day, in which he repeatedly tried to take on Democrats who were and Republicans for that matter. I mean, Thomas Massey turned that man inside out. And, you want to talk about some bipartisanship. How about Thomas Massey and me being on the same page about something? And because...
Yeah, Massey's been real opinionated about the Epstein files.
Let's be more fair to Thomas Massey, in my opinion. Thomas Massey's been right about a lot of stuff. And he's been,
I agree.
He's been unwilling to move off of these things. He's been unwilling to accept some of what seems to me to be absolute bullshit coming from the Trump administration about some of this stuff. And some of that played out during that hearing, which I think is probably going to be the end of Kash Patel when it's all said and done here. Because of the arguments with Cory Booker and Swalwell and all the other folks. Not because of those. It was the things like, for example, in the exchange, I believe, with Swalwell, where he said that he was asking him, was Donald Trump's name in the Epstein files 1,000 times? Was it, and he got him so mad that Patel eventually said, it's not that many. And then he said, that was just said. Is it 100? No, it's not. He's like, no. And he said, well, how many is it? I don't know, but not that many.
You said you don't know the number of times Trump's name appears in the files, so it could at least be 1,000 times. Is that right?
The number is a total misleading factor. We have not released anyone's name in the Epstein files that has not been credible.
Director, could it at least be 1,000 times?
We have released every piece of legally permissible information.
Okay,
you can characterize the numbers however you want it.
Claiming my time, Director. It sounds like if you don't know the number, it could at least be 1,000 times.
It's not. It's not.
Is it at least 500 times?
No.
Is it at least 100 times?
No.
Then what's the number?
I don't know the number, but it's not that.
Do you think it might be your job to know the number?
And so you're like, well, then there's in there quite a bit then,
Yeah. He made a concession.
Basically you're saying he's in
making there. a concession, yeah. Cory Booker, of course, said the same thing that you just said. He doesn't think he's long for that position. And I guess that's probably for the same reason, because of his inability to really be a savvy kind of, give savvy kind of testimony. But my thing with Patel is I think the reason he's lasted as long as he has, because let's be honest, as many people have pointed out, the guy had zero experience, not just with the FBI, but with law enforcement, period. Zero experience. So how do you put somebody in that position who doesn't know the first thing about law enforcement at all on any substantive level, let alone to run what is essentially, what would be the equivalent of a multinational corporation?
Yeah.
The FBI. I mean, it's just a crazy kind of appointment. The insanity of that appointment transcends partisanship.
Yeah.
I mean, it would almost be as bad as if, he'd appointed, your daughter or my son, to be to run the FBI. What?
Yeah, no, it's nuts. But I mean, look, he did immediately go out and hire a very qualified second in command. The podcaster Dan Bongino or whatever his name is, who also has
Zero
not much experience at all. It just
or not much. Yeah, you're right. Not
this, and I'll tell you this. I should have brought up earlier too. The FCC chair. Going on attack during this whole thing, and then essentially admitting that the stuff with Kimmel and the network stuff was part of the Project 2025 plan in a tweet, and then also it plays in with Kash Patel. And that's the reason why he was put there. It's like you said, is he's part of this plan, and they never, because they were going to fire a bunch of people, then they were going to weaponize the FBI to go after political adversaries. That's what they were doing. And they have instead got themselves caught up in a real scandal here and a real problem with this Epstein stuff, because the guy that's leading this charge his name is all over that thing. And I mean, it's obvious at this point in time now that that's the case. And the lies at this point are so utterly stupid that it's hard to believe that they're going into these hearings this unprepared for these questions. I mean, when he told Thomas Massie that he told Massie was asking him about in a follow-up about it, but it was another Republican in the Senate, I believe, maybe Cassidy or one of those guys over in the Senate, were asked him. I know who it was. It was Kennedy from Louisiana. Asked him about the evidence, and he said that there was no credible evidence that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked girls to anyone else other than himself. What? I mean,
flies in the face of everything that we know that's out there in the public.
There are 100 victims that are telling you, here are the people. And as Massie said, I can name these people. And Massie started naming names during this damn thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's insanity that they're trying to cover this up to this point and then acting like all indignant when this is...
When people catch them in really stupid lies.
Yes.
When people catch them in stupid lies, they're indignant. I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
Because while I agree with you about Massie and I admire his tenacity on this issue, I'm still curious to know what is his... I mean, does he have a political objective here, or do you think this is just him being truly a person who is morally outraged about this Epstein situation and trying to get to the bottom of it?
I think both of those things are true. I think that he, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, some of these other folks, they went all in on this Epstein stuff. Okay. They went all in before Trump was reelected. They went all in on this and talked about these things, and Pam Bondi as well, that, talked about what they were going to do, how they were going to handle it. We were going
She had it on her desk, Josh.
Sitting on her desk. Sitting on my desk right now. Right now.
That's what she said.
Yeah. And all of these other people, they've dug through these files. They've seen the evidence. They know that these things took place. Yeah, a lot of them bought into the conspiracy theory that that Epstein did not hang himself in prison, which I think there is. I mean, that's another part of this. The video that cuts out and leaves out minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you doing?
I don't believe he hung himself. I don't believe that.
Of course not. Of course he didn't hang himself. And so, so we have all of this together, and I think, man, they built themselves a hill that they were going to die on. And I think some of them, like Kash Patel, have been forced, because they want to remain in this position, they have been forced to come off the hill. And folks like Massie and let's be honest, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Lauren Boebert as well. They've all hung up there. And I think they went so far into it that they cannot credibly now pull themselves away from it. And I'll also, to the human level of this, many of them have met with those Epstein victims. And I think that has had a sway on them. And so I think that is what is at play here. Now, does it maybe benefit them politically? Probably, I don't know.
That's what I can't figure out.
I mean, maybe it doesn't hurt them, but I mean, MAGA world is so weird. I have no idea what does and doesn't hurt anybody anymore in MAGA world. I mean, things that used to be, crushing to somebody's political career, like, for example, living in a different state and running for governor in another one, those things would have been, crazy town, in 10, 15 years ago. Now, I don't know, but I think maybe it's neutral to that degree. So maybe it's not hurting them, but I don't know that it's necessarily helping them either. And so I just think that, but at the same time, who's out there is mad at Thomas Massie other than Trump? I mean, Massie's only
doesn't seem to be anybody. I mean, I don't hear, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't hear about any outcry from his state over what he's doing.
No, I don't either. And the problem is that when they have these hearings, if Thomas Massie came off like a raving lunatic, then yeah, okay, there would be some problems there. The problem for them is he's not. He's asking sane, pertinent questions, logic that ring true to everybody because they are true. I mean, the questions he's talking about the truth in these things, and the people who are coming off like the crazy people are the Kash Patels and the administration who are obviously trying to cover this thing up. And trying to get away from releasing more documents. And I mean, the outright lies have been exposed now so many times that it's just comical to watch them flail about almost. I'll say this. It would be comical if this were not so serious. We're talking about child rape here, okay?
Yeah. And not just child rape, not just human trafficking, but what appears to have happened on a massive scale.
Yes.
Involving hundreds of young women and who knows, maybe there are even some young men in the mix too, but for sure we know about, there appears to be hundreds of young women and also people with a considerable amount of wealth and power who had the ability to not even facilitate this and enable this, but to do it on a scale that is kind of mind-boggling. And these are the people, by the way, allegedly, if we're to believe some of the relationships that Epstein had, these are people who were controlling aspects of our society around the world.
Yes.
That's a really mind-boggling scale of evil.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. It is.
Evil.
I have not gone completely down this rabbit hole. I mean, just because at this point it is so overwhelming to me, the amount of information and things that are out there and all these different little tunnels that are there that you have to dig through to get to some of this information that a lot of people out there just know at this point. And it is, but I'll say this. I mean, it's obvious to me that this was going on. I mean, we know this was going on. This was absolutely going on. Otherwise, why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and why was Epstein in prison for that matter? We know that these things were happening.
Right.
And
Josh, wait a minute. They were in prison because it's a Democratic hoax.
Oh, yeah, it's a hoax. Yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry.
It was a Democratic hoax. The whole thing was a Democratic hoax. Yeah, that's why they were in prison.
But obviously, there's some Democrats involved in this thing, man. There's some people who funded Democratic candidates and send them to jail. Send them to jail. I don't care about any of these people. And it just. But we've seen the documentaries. I've watched a couple of documentaries. I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, it's just, and it was literally trolling high schools, man. I mean, it was just, and grooming these girls and just feeding them this, it was the most disgusting shit ever, to watch this take place.
I haven't watched the documentaries, but I have listened to interviews and read news stories, and it is really profoundly disturbing.
Oh, it's awful. Awful. Yeah. And so, I mean, I just don't, for them now to sit on this stuff, because we all know why they're doing it. We all know why they're doing it. And listen, I'll say this. It's the same reason why actions that were just as deplorable, some other people have tried to sweep these things under the rug and cover these things up. And mainly those folks in Florida who gave Epstein this really sweetheart of a deal to let him go. Look, I'll say this. Those people ought to go to prison too. Those people who tried to give him that deal to let him off the hook and push that shit through, they ought to go to jail. They ought to go. Sure. All of them ought to go to jail. Otherwise, this sort of corruption shit and this sort of awfulness doesn't get fixed. Okay. And I think if Bill Clinton did it, send Bill Clinton in there. If Donald Trump did it, send Donald Trump's ass to prison too. And they're in those files. Open them up and let's just see where everything falls.
Yep. I agree 100%.
But, this is what happens when you appoint people who are totally unprepared and unqualified to do the job. And that's what we have now.
And also who seem to be, and I don't think any other word applies, just patently corrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, because this Patel, I mean, he sits there and in his testimony, it sounds to me like he's just kind of, some of the stuff, it just sounded like he was just making it up on the spot.
Yeah. I mean, Oh, the stuff about, the court orders, blocking them and preventing them from. No, it's not. They're not. Even the judges who wrote the court orders say, no, they don't prevent them from releasing anything. So, all right. Well, let's get ourselves out of here.
All right.
Y'all try to be better about things and stop shooting and killing each other. Okay. I mean, come on.
As John Lennon once said, let's give peace a chance.
Yeah. And then somebody shot John Lennon.
Somebody did, but he did say that though.
Oh, he did. So y'all give it a shot. And until next week, y'all be safe out there.
Peace.